The X-Zone Radio Show is heard on radio broadcast affiliates worldwide, including
AM 580 CFRA in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada.
WPUL AM 1590 in Daytona Beach, Florida.
KOHI AM 1610 in St. Helens, Oregon.
KHRO AM 1150 in El Paso, Texas. And for more information on becoming a professional broadcast affiliate of the X-Zone Radio Show, visit
www.xzbn.net
or call toll-free worldwide
1-800-610-7035.
The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
The legend lives on from the Chippewa on down to the big lake they call Gitchagumi. The lake, it is said, never gives up her dead when the skies of November turn gloomy. With a load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty. That good ship and true was a bone to be chewed when the gales of November came early. The ship was the pride of the American side, coming back from some mill in Wisconsin. As the big freighters go.
And welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And for those of you around the world who are saying to yourselves, all right, Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Well, I know where Canada is. I know where Ontario is. It's one of the provinces. It's in between Manitoba and Quebec. But where's Hamilton? Well, on your map, just find or Google Hamilton. But if you've got the old-fashioned globe or a map, we're on the shores of Lake Ontario in between Toronto and Niagara Falls, smack dab in the middle of the Great Lakes Triangle. Our toll-free number worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour is director-producer Bob Wilkinson. We're going to be talking to Bob about his new release entitled Shades of Grey. Now, Bob is a documentary director-producer carving out a unique voice within the genre. Having been inspired by Robert Rodriguez's book, Rebel Without a Crew, Wilkinson sets out to create films with a dramatic flair. Working through the West Virginia Public Broadcasting, Bob produced Rounding Third, a history of minor league Watt Powell Ballpark, John Brown's Body, a look at the lasting legacy of John Brown's raid in Harpers Ferry, and Homestead, a history of the homestead movement in West Virginia. Now, Shades of Grey is Bob's first feature-length film focusing on the life of UFO provocateur Gary Barker. Having gained excellent reviews and awards, Shades is distributed by EI Entertainment, Seminal Films domestically, and Trillain Entertainment worldwide. Currently, Bob Wilkinson is working on his latest film, Romeo Must Hang. The piece details the exploits of 1930s killer Harry Powers, the inspiration for Hollywood's classic Night of the Hunter. A graduate of West Virginia State College, Wilkinson also participated in a prestigious documentary filmmaking workshop at WGBH, Boston's public television station, and joining us now to talk about, well, not right now, we're going to wait until we get to the other side of this commercial break that we've got to take in about a minute. But on the other side of the break, Bob Wilkinson is going to be joining me to talk about Shades of Grey. His website, www.theyknewtoomuch.com. That's www.theyknewtoomuch.com. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and on Star Cable. If you'd like to give us a call at any time, our toll-free number is manned 24 hours a day at 1-800-610-7035. Or you can chat with our on-duty producer on MSN Messenger, once again, 24 hours a day, by using the MSN address xzoneradiotv.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. I'll be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break talking about Shades of Grey with my special guest this hour, Bob Wilkinson, as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Back in 2.
The ship was the pride of the American side.
Where is the moment we needed the most? You kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. Tell me your blue skies fade to gray. Tell me your passion's gone away. And I don't need no carrying on. You stand in the line just to hit a new low. You're faking a smile with the coffee to go. And tell me your life's been way offline. You fall into pieces every time. And I don't need no carrying on. 'Cause you had a bad day. You take it one-
X-Zone Nation, Bob Wilkinson is my special guest. He is a director-producer, and we're talking about Shades of Grey, the brand new feature-length film focusing on the life of UFO provocateur Gary Barker. His website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. And Bob Wilkinson, welcome to the X-Zone. How are you, Bob?
Hi, doing good. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about Shades of Grey.
Shades of Grey is a film that follows what I consider one of the early UFO pioneers, Gray Barker, and he was very prolific, a very prolific writer, and a lot of his works have become, I guess, part of the lore of the field today.
Now, what was your interest in Grey, and why did you decide to do a feature film about his UFO exploits?
As a documentary filmmaker, I'm always looking for a good story, and I kind of grew up a fan of a lot, the horror genre and sci-fi movies, and kind of curiosity in the UFO field. And I just ran across an article that talked about this archive that was located in Clarksburg, West Virginia, and it housed Gray Barker's writings, his letters, his books, and papers. And I thought, well, I need to go up and check this out. I guess the article was like a modern, or the roots of X-Files housed in the Clarksburg Library. Mm-hmm. And you go up there, and it really is. It's this rich history of the UFO field and this man's life. And the more and more I read about him, I was just like, this has all the elements were there for a good story. And so I followed in, gathering interviews.
So tell me, do you believe in UFOs or experience?
I wouldn't say that I don't believe in UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would consider myself a skeptic in all the fields, but I'm definitely not closed-minded about it. And because I hear people's stories, and you read about some of the stories that Gray Barker collected, and these people have genuine experiences, and it's tough to discount these stories. And at the same time, it's hard to separate the fact from fiction in them. And so, but you definitely can't dismiss someone who's had a genuine experience and they have feelings. You can see it when you talk to someone face to face that they've had an encounter of some kind. And I can't explain it, but you can't. I don't think it's fair to dismiss that.
So would you say that based on your experience doing Shades of Grey that you're more in tune to actually believe that UFOs actually exist compared to before getting involved in this project?
I don't think my opinion has changed. I think Gray Barker was known to generate some controversy himself, and with his writings, Gray Barker, he was willing. Gray Barker was in the UFO field, but he would spice things up a little bit. And I think, as humans, we all do that. We want to make the story sound a little better. But I don't think my opinion has changed. I'm basically open to the idea. And I think that moment you close your mind to that stuff, then you won't experience it. It's the same thing with the paranormal field, where, if you're not willing to accept that maybe there are ghosts, and you're going to close off that realm to you, and you won't be able to experience that.
So tell us a little bit about Gray Barker and his footprint in ufology.
Well, Gray's really known for his writings of the Men in Black. That's where he kind of left his mark. And he wrote a book called "They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers," which is where we got the title of the webpage, theyknewtoomuch.com. And the book was about people who had experiences with a UFO encounter, and there were government agents who came to quiet them, to silence them. And the book, I won't say that there's been evidence of the Men in Black throughout history, and I spoke with Jerome Clark about it, and you can go back,
right,
way back in history, and there's writings about these mysterious Men in Black. But I would say that Gray Barker has done more, especially in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, to promote the Men in Black than any other writer. And I think that a lot of the stuff you see today, came from his interpretation of what these Men in Black were. And I would say that's his large footprint. I know a lot of people visit his archive to get information on the Hollow Earth theory. And it's become, I guess, a minor tourist spot there for the UFO enthusiasts there in Clarksburg, West Virginia. People will stop in periodically and want to know about the Hollow Earth. And, they'll go through his paperwork and try to find out, what he wrote about that.
Do you think that there's enough evidence to substantiate claims that the Hollow Earth is actually a fact instead of sheer fiction?
What I found is that the early Hollow Earth stuff was written by Ray Palmer, and the Robert Shaver mystery. I guess Robert Shaver came to Ray Palmer with this idea, and Ray Palmer turned it into. He turned this science fiction story into a journalistic piece, and so Palmer started to kind of blur those lines between fact and fiction, and. To me, if you go back to the origins of it, it started out as just a good story that was promoted, and that was really the early beginnings of this popular culture.
How do you think ufology and the paranormal has actually changed present day culture?
Present day culture?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I think. For one, it's a booming industry now, today. I know here in West Virginia we have a few destinations with the Moundsville Prison and the Lunatic Asylum in Weston, and then you have like the Lake Shawnee, the abandoned theme park down in southern West Virginia. That they're huge. You know, the state even promotes them. Just say, hey, come and look at our ghosts and those sorts of things. And we also have they're classified as UFO flying saucer events, but you have the Mothman in Point Pleasant and the Braxton County Monster in Flatwoods, both of which Gray Barker, he investigated both of those events, and I think it's become mainstream is really what's happened, and I think what's the thing that's changed most about it, people are willing to talk about it. Like back in the 50s when the Flatwoods Monster incident happened, and these country folk talk about this event that happened, and they were afraid to talk about it, and because they didn't want to be ridiculed, and some of them didn't talk about it, and still today some of the witnesses won't speak about it, and because they don't want that public ridicule. But I think that is what's really changed the most. Is it seems like the public is willing to listen now, and you don't get. It doesn't seem like you get that ridicule as much anymore, and people are willing to speak about it more.
Do you think that that Gray Barker was one of these people who believed that the government was suppressing information about UFOs, and that the crashes at Roswell and other places were actually suppressed for one reason or another?
I think that I think that Gray did. I think he was basically. I guess the best way to answer that is Gray was a product of his time in society, time and place in society, and especially being from West Virginia. And I think there's a lot of social satire in some of his writings with the Men in Black.
Right.
That you can't say too much or you're going to get into trouble. And, if you have this secret, then you got to keep it to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that more or less I think Gray Barker was more George Orwell than he was a UFO writer from that standpoint, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it actually does. So during the filming of Shades of Grey, what did you ever come across anything that you would consider to be resistance of one sort or another, or was there any aha moment that you and your cast and crew came across?
Well, I did get some resistance in the interviews, and I won't name names because
Sure.
they didn't want to be interviewed.
I understand. I appreciate that.
But I would talk to the people, and they were important interviews because they were speaking to some of the main subjects in the film. Mm-hmm. And I would set up interviews, and the conversations on the phone were good. I was excited to do the interview. They were excited to participate in the film. And then a few weeks later, I would get a call, and they'd be like, "Look, I don't really think I can talk about this."
All right, stand by. You and I have to take a 2-minute commercial. We've got to take our news break. 2-minute commercial. We've already done that. I'm losing track of time now. Oh, no. I'm going through the time vortex again. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Bob Wilkinson is our special guest. He is the producer and director of Shades of Grey. Once again, his website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news. Don't go away. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. X X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio,
Euro High Definition Radio,
and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035.
Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com.
On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com,
And our website,
www.xzoneradiotv.com.
Why do I feel like I'm losing control?
The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
You're born, they make you feel small by giving you no time instead of it all, till the pain is so big you feel nothing at all. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. They hurt you at home and they hit you at school. They hate if you're clever and despise a fool. Until you're so crazy you can't follow their rules. A working class hero is something to be. A working class hero is something to be. When they tortured and scared you for 20-odd years.
X-Zone Nation, Bob Wilkinson is my special guest this hour. He is the director and producer of Shades of Grey. His website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. Bob, tell us about the company that you work for, the company behind Shades of Grey.
Yeah, the company behind it is Allegheny Image Factory, and it's ran by brothers Bob and Jeff Tennell, and they came aboard the project, about a year or two after I'd begun it, and they've been in the industry for some time. They've worked out in L.A. for a while, and Jeff was in the music industry with like the Rolling Stones, Chili Peppers, and Metallica, right. and then he also did something that would be that's really popular in Canada. He did a couple French-Canadian hockey films called Les Boys, or Les Boys 1 and 2, and those are actually pretty popular up in that region. And Bob did a cult classic, one of my favorites as a kid, Surf Nazis Must Die. He was producer on that, and he's also a graphic novelist now, and he's kind of tapped into that market of the comic book genre, and he's done a few really popular titles there. And this was the first documentary that they got aboard, and they had called me. It was just a chance meeting, and Steve Fezemeyer, the former film commissioner here in West Virginia, called me and said, "Hey, you need to call this guy," and gave me his number, and he told Bob the same thing, Bob Tennell, you need to call this guy, and I was kind of hesitant to do it because you get that all the time, where you're kind of hesitant to call, and you're like, I'll put that off. I'm going to make my film and just finish it. And so reluctantly one day, and Bob says the same thing. He's like, I didn't want to talk to you at all. I didn't want to do this. I just did it because Steve recommended Bob up. He called his brother immediately, and they drove down to West Virginia here, and we met, and I showed him what I'd shot, some of the footage, and right away we started a partnership to get the film shot.
How has digital photography changed the film industry? You know, did you shoot it in 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, or on high def video?
This was shot on digital video, and I mean, it's changed it because it's made storytelling more accessible. Someone like me, I mean, if I would have started this project and began this by shooting on 16 millimeter or 35 millimeter, I would have never got this project started. I just couldn't afford it. And because in the early days of this, it was basically I would load up my car with all the gear I needed, and I would drive and I would interview someone. And I would call my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law's a banker, and I'd call him up and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to go do this interview. You interested in running audio? Can you help me carry all this gear?" And, you know, as a matter of fact, I met my brother-in-law that way. I called him and said, "Hey, I'm going to go interview Jim Mosley in Key West. Won't you jump in the car and drive to Key West with me? I'll pay for your trip if you'll just, you know, be my key grip and my audio guy." And I think that's what the digital media has done. It's made the storytelling in the genre a little more accessible and affordable.
Tell me, what is the hardest part about doing a full-length feature like Shades of Grey with today's technology? What are some of the obstacles that you had to work your way around?
For me, it was budgetary. You know, my personal. You know, when you fund these things yourself, I mean, it can quickly add up, and you know, it's not easy to get from West Virginia, you know, just to drive to West Virginia to Key West to do an interview just because I believe in this idea, and you got to convince others to get on board with you. As far as the technology, you know, it's just the learning curve is the tough part. You know, with computers, everything changes so fast, and there's a learning curve there that goes with it. You got to keep on top of it, and there's always little problems that creep up here and there, and you got to figure out how to fix them because it's a small, you know, it's a small operation, and when you're an independent, you know, you don't have a team of IT to fall back on, and so those were my biggest challenges. And in the fact that it's digital video, one thing that's challenging is because it's so cheap, you tend to shoot too much, and you kind of, if you're shooting 16 millimeter, you're thinking about, all right, I gotta get these are the points I want to get, and so I guess the medium has a tendency to make it a little bit lazy.
So I guess it also gives you as the director producer a lot larger, wider range and scope. For example, I guess you can go into the edit studio yourself now and help the edit master, as well as sit there and use digital effects that you couldn't do in the days of 35, 65, you know, and 16 millimeter.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing today. Like a transition, for instance. I mean, we won't even talk about special effects. We'll talk about a dissolve.
Yeah.
And you know, I can just put a dissolve in, and you know, you hear young kids now talk about render time. Oh, you got to render this. This is insane. But you know, in the day of the film, you would have to say, all right, this is my dissolve. Send it off to a lab. Wait a few weeks, and you'll get your dissolve back. And so it was a matter. I used to edit with my former boss, Mike Youngren, and we would sit here at the Avid, and he would talk, and he'd say, well, let's dissolve that. I'd put the dissolve in, and we'd move on. He's like, you know, back in the day, I'd have to wait 4 weeks to get my negatives back, and so, I mean, it really has. The business has changed dramatically.
Unreal. X-Zone Nation, I'm talking to Bob Wilkinson. He's the producer and director of Shades of Grey, and his website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. That's www.theyknewtoomuch.com. And Shades of Grey is Bob's feature film focusing on the life of UFO provocateur Gray Barker. And we're talking about that. We're talking about every aspect of it. And what is the the general consensus of people that you've shown the film to pertaining to UFOs? Are they mostly believers or are they skeptical?
Yeah, you kind of run into a mix of both. But the one thing that really struck me about this process is that you can talk to anyone and say, and they're like, "What are you working on?" I'm working on a film about Gray Barker. He's the man who popularized the Men in Black. And you'll be surprised at the dialogue that opens up and the people that are willing to say, "You know what? When I was 16, I was out in the woods and there was this light that kept following me, and I followed it too." And you know, it just opens this dialogue, and you realize that more people have a story to tell than you would think.
Yeah.
And because a lot of times the people in the field get dismissed as crazy kooks and things like that, and I think that's unfair, because I think, you know, when you have a genuine, it's like even with me when I make this film. I mean, I'm a champion for this film, and I could come across as being a little excessive or kooky about my film because I believe in it. And I think you get that with people who truly believe in what they're talking about. But I was really surprised at the amount of people who would open up and talk to you about different things in the field.
If someone listening today or this evening is contemplating becoming a producer and a director, and they really don't know which path to follow, how would you be able to guide them into the right direction of learning where to go to school, what to do, and what some of the pros and cons are of being a film director today?
Well, I would recommend. I fell into it by chance, and I would just recommend reading. Mm-hmm. And you know, school's good, and it's good to learn the right way to do things, and you need to find someone to really show you, and I guess the rules of the game. That way you can begin to play it. And I would recommend reading. I started out reading a few books like the Robert Rodriguez's, Quentin Tarantino's, Roger Corman, and there's a lot of insight in there on how to get going in the business. And I mean, I just bought a camera and started doing it. And I went to West Virginia State College, which is just a small community college here in West Virginia, and it's actually obtained university status since I've graduated. But they have a good communication department. It's not a film department, but it's a communication department. I met with some people who've made some films. Kenny Boyd, who made a couple films, Chillers, Invasion of the Space Creatures, things like that. And you just start I felt my way around and learned how to do it. And I just bought my camera, made my own mistakes, and learned from them. And so it's my story is definitely not the typical story, because I didn't go to a film school, and sometimes it's real that I sit here and think that, next week on June 15th, my film is available on Blockbuster and Amazon and Walmart and Target, and you just think, sometimes you sit back and like, wow, how did this happen? And so, but I mean, if you have a story to tell, I'm a believer that you just find a way to tell that story.
What was it like the very first time after you decided that you wanted to become a filmmaker, that you actually saw your very first production on the big screen or on the small screen? How did you feel? It feels great. I guess the first production that I did that was broadcast was in West Virginia on public television. Mm-hmm. And, to go home and sit down and you see it coming over the television, it's a really neat feeling, even on a small level like that, where it's across the state of West Virginia. And I mean, it feels good that people get a chance to see the story that I wanted to tell. And, that's really the benefit that I get out of this, is that it's out there. And, I'm with Shades of Grey, I'm really excited
it's a good opportunity. People are going to get to see the story that I felt was important to tell, and so that's kind of it's really exciting.
Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Bob Wilkinson. As I've been saying throughout this hour, he is the director and producer of Shades of Grey. Now, for more information, the website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. That's www.theyknewtoomuch.com. Bob, please stand by. You and I have to take our final break. We'll be back very shortly. You know how it is in this industry. We have to make commercials a prime time thing over here, just like in television. But you don't have that problem with movies, commercials. I guess the big problem is getting the funding.
Funding is the problem.
Well, we'll talk more about this when we come back. Bob, thanks very much for joining us. Bob Wilkinson and I return on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues. We're right here live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. 1-800-610-7035 is toll-free. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Good news coming in the next week, I hope, by the 17th of June at the very latest, about paragators. I'm really excited about this. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
They hurt you at home and they hit you at school. They hate if you...
Faded photographs covered now with lines and creases, tickets torn in half, memories in bits and pieces, traces of love long ago that didn't work out right. Traces of love.
Explanation, Bob Wilkinson is my special guest. He is the director-producer of Shades of Grey. And first of all, congratulations on a great film. And tell me, what was early ufology like? Is there something that the people here in the year 2010 need to understand about ufology back when Gray Barker was involved?
Yeah, I do. I think that in the 1950s, I think that everyone had this sense of awe and wonderment.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting. We talked about how did this digital media change things. Well, I think it's made us more, we don't believe things as easy. We don't have that sense of awe and wonderment like they did in the 1950s because of what you see on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I think is important about the UFO field and ufology is that you understand someone like Gray Barker. The life of Gray Barker gives you a great deal of insight into that early culture, and the way that you tell a story, the way that the events are recorded in that time, and the sense of wonderment that people had in the 1950s and 60s. And I think that along with this film, the archives up there in Clarksburg is just such a gem that's there for anyone wanting to delve into this subject, whether they're believers or whether they're non-believers. I think that it's such a little gem hidden up there in Clarksburg, West Virginia, where Gray Barker, spent most of his days.
So it's a matter of perception as well as culture that all has to be taken into consideration and account when comparing apples and oranges, comparing the day of Gray Barker to the year 2010.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
What would you like viewers to to walk away with after they have seen Shades of Grey?
I would think, I guess, it would be something Gray Barker said in one of the videos that I placed in the film. It's like, if you look up in the sky and you do not see, if you look deep within, there you will see. And I think that's kind of what the film is about. It's almost about what's in you as much as it is what's out there, And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I mean it's a human story, and I think it's something that says, if someone comes up to you and has a story to tell you, listen to the story, and don't dismiss that person, and don't push them away, and I think that in the end, that's what the film, wanted to say.
Listen, Bob, you and I got to say so long for now. I look forward to talking to you in the future. Continued success, and we'll send as many people as we can to see Shades of Grey. The website is www.theyknewtoomuch.com. Bob Wilkinson has been my guest. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news at 6.5 minutes past. Don't go away.